Thaberus was in a grim mood, grimmer than usual. Getting himself and people under his responsibility ambushed was rare for him, let alone twice in a day. Thaberus Thorn was an in-the-field type of Inquisitor without being a psyker himself, and while it was true the ability to use psychic powers was never a mandatory requirement and the vast majority of Inquisitors have no affinity for the warp, its sheer advantage was glaringly apparent. A check on the list of whois who have famously celebrated Inquisitors amongst the Imperial elites and one could quickly deduce almost all of them were psykers. From the High Protector of the Formosa sector Torquemada Cotes, the philosophical Gideon Ravener and even the questionable Gregor Eisenhorn, all were known for their psychic prowess. In light of that, Thaberus had worked extremely hard to get to where he was and paid extra diligence to compensate for that disadvantage. That said, what happened a few days ago had Thaberus silently grateful for being a non-psyker for the first time. Something massive was happening in the warp and all the psykers in his warband were experiencing difficulties, citing constant nightmares and constantly being affected by feelings of utter dread. The conditions became so bad the most severely affected individuals had to be put in a medically induced coma to prevent cases of self-harm. And thus Thaberus had been operating without his usual contingent of psychic aids in his field works recently. Would that have helped in not getting ambushed? He was not sure, and that realization only served to sour his mood further. "Sir, we are done here." Amel's voice woke him from his thoughts. Thaberus turned to his interrogator, silently asking the latter to proceed. Amel continued his report. "An order of unknown origin came through, authorizing the Manticores to attack us, but the trails might lead to nowhere. There has to be a collaborator from the inside." Well, that was expected, the Inquisitor sighed internally, his mind lamenting at these predictable outcomes. After decades of working in the field, most things became tiresomely predictable, except for that lady. Thaberus found his mind turning at thinking about SYRINE and the fact that he could not get a proper read on her. One moment she was saying she lost her memory and had an almost civilian-like bearing, the next thing he knew she saved him and his retinue without even flinching at how close they were at death's door. He had secretly observed her expression and breathing aboard the Flame Raven and concluded she never for a second seemed worried during the tense moments. SYRINE was merely sitting on her chair, eyes closed with a peaceful expression when the heavy bolters were discharged at the exact moment it needed to get them out of that deadly predicament. What did that Archdominus call her again? Omniscient Princess? Thaberus pondered on these questions and found no satisfying answers. At this point, he could not even be sure if the assassination attempts were aiming at him or her. It was at this time he received a coded message from Leandra. He took a quick glimpse and was stunned by what he read. Amel was quick to notice his master's reaction and politely inquired, "Sir?" Thaberus did a quick mental check on the chances of their conversation being compromised before deciding it was safe enough to answer his interrogator. "SYRINE and Aradus have made contact with other Imperial worlds." Amel gasped upon hearing the news. While it was technically true Aradus Rain was the last known astropath on the planet, Thaberus' own warband had another skillful astropath who was on his ship orbiting the planet, and the psycho had been trying for days without result. "Sir, that is good news. Are reinforcements coming?" Amel could not contain himself. "I am afraid not," replied Thaberus. "They could only contact planets within the subsector. These were of no use to us in terms of reinforcements. Something huge must be going on out there." "So we are back to square one," sighed Amel. "I thought she was just coming along to show us her sincerity and get the Archdominus to work with us." "To think she actually was able to make contact with other planets," said Thaberus before asking, "What is your reading on her?" Amel looked at his master, his mouth half opened but nothing came out for a while. When he was just about to speak, Thaberus cut him off halfway. "Other than appearance." That kept Amel's mouth open for a little longer before he sighed again and answered, "I don't know. Without witnessing what she did, she just felt like a civilian." "So, a psychic civilian, who can pierce the veil of warp when our astropath has failed, and she could even talk to machine spirits while keeping a pet Archdominus," Thaberus teased. "Might be a transhuman too while we are at it," laughed Amel. "And you said that because?" "Just look at her. She has been with us for hours and never once showed any signs of physical exhaustion, nor did she ever ask for any nourishments." "So you were watching?" "Of course." "Is she like Leandra then?" Amel thought for a while before answering. "Maybe, and probably more dangerous.
Why?
If I met her on the street without knowing better, she would probably just come across as just being breathtakingly pretty. Whereas for Nyan, well, you can always tell she is dangerous.
So you can't get a proper read on her too, remarked Thabrus.
Sir, Amel whispered, with all due respect, hypothetically speaking, if you were to issue a kill order to Nyan now,
who do you think will come out alive?
Thabrus contemplated for a while before deciding to drop the difficult subject and asked another question.
You said the trails might lead nowhere. Elaborate.
They left so many digital trails behind that most are probably just feints. We have neither the resources nor the time to pursue all of them. I have shown the preliminary findings to our back-end team. They said it might take weeks to sort it out. Unless we somehow have a whole starship's worth of advanced cogitators and a capable mind to wield that at our disposal.
I have just the contact here.
Since that attack almost took her out, I imagine this would provide sufficient motivation for our new Adeptus Mechanicus acquaintance to expedite his efforts, said Thabrus, a hint of a smile appearing on his stern visage. Compile all the data you found together with Flame Raven's flight log of the incident. It is time to contact the Archdominus for that luggage arrangement we promised, the Inquisitor ordered. Sometime later, inside a fortified command bunker somewhere near the front line, a high-level strategic discussion was interrupted by a statement uttered by a certain high-ranking individual attending the meeting. Deplorable. A massive hooded and hunched figure snarled as he struck the ground with the end knob of his giant omniscient axe. The impact created a deafening clang and the primary holographic projector inside the meeting chamber flickered in protest. The figure's sudden outburst put the meeting proceeding to a grinding halt as all eyes were on him, not knowing what to expect next. Being more machine than man, senior members of the Adeptus Mechanicus were known for their almost inhuman dispassionate disposition throughout the Imperium. The fact that such a high-ranking representative of the Order even broke basic etiquette to express his outrage had everyone at the high-level meeting stunned silent. Sitting around a huge table with a holographic projector in the center were some of the most powerful individuals on the planet. Present on one side was the planetary governor, Lord General and generals of the Planetary Defense Force. Sitting across them in their power armor was the Canonis and Palatines of the Adeptus Auroritas. It was Canonist Iadina who broke the awkward silence. Esteemed Dominus, what was that about? The words from the supreme leader of Adeptus Auroritas order on the planet seemed to pull the spaced-out Dominus back to the meeting as the latter quickly apologized. Pardon me, Cryptora bowed. I must ask for forgiveness from all you luminaries for my lack of self-control upon hearing reports of the rebels' heresy. Now, came a cultured female voice, having righteous zeal is a virtue. Though I must confess I am inspired by your show of passion which is such a rarity for your kin. We were fortunate enough for you to come to our aid in this dire hour, for that we will be forever grateful, said Catalina von Cleus, the current ruling planetary governor. The governor was a gorgeous-looking blonde who looked to be in her early 30s but was in fact over 70 years old. Being powerful and wealthy, she had constant periodical rejuvenate treatments to preserve her youth. Thanks to that, she stood tall and her golden personalized power armor glittered in the meeting chamber, but upon closer inspection minor battle damages and scratches could be seen here and there. Little did Catalina know that Cryptora wasn't fussing over what was shown at the strategic meeting. The Archdominus had just received a message from Thabrus via his secured network and saw what had transpired. The outrage he experienced was so severe that it overcame his multi-layered emotional suppressor, resulting in his unexpected outburst. These damned heretics were so close to ruining his sacred mission again. For the second time in 24 hours, Cryptora was seething with a sense of anger that had last been experienced lifetimes ago, and how could he have not? He had caught glimpses of what was behind the blast door at the end of the activation chamber. There, what might be a true technological treasure trove awaited, and just when he was about to gain entrance to it, unexpected events kept delaying his access to it. Cryptora Sukal had lived for many thousands of years. What little remained of his humanity was locked away in a thrice-reinforced adamantium skull, and his true personality was locked even deeper underneath an operating surface persona. Through certain past experiences, he had learned the hard way on the disadvantage of putting one's indifference on open display, especially when dealing with any powerful individuals who were not adepts of the Omnissiah. Ever the practical soul, He had searched for a solution and came across a method that was borderline heretical by the reckoning of his order. Through advanced neuron and cogitator manipulation, he created a subcore of himself and wore it like a mask. This subcore persona was designed to be approachable by non-augmented humans for smoother interaction, and it had worked wonders for him, opening previously closed doors in negotiations. Ever since then he had been operating as such. His subcore would appear friendly and interact with the outside world, while his true cold, dispassionate and calculative self would withdraw and run computations on whatever he fancied, essentially running simultaneous thought processing. Very rarely, some event deemed by himself important enough would occur and his true self would surface to take over the autopiloting friendly subcore persona. Cryptoras silently stood up as his subcore personality was recalled. As he did so, all pretense of subtle human behavior and speech pattern imitation was dropped as he spoke in a cold flat tone. This conflict delays the great work of the glorious Omnissiah, and as such, warrant my undivided attention to end it as soon as possible. I have deemed it necessary to deploy all the resources at my disposal to prove the supremacy of the machine god to the heretics. My cult will be most grateful for the full cooperation from you all to see this through, as will the benefactor of my holy expedition. Though his words sounded courteous enough, all those present felt Cryptora's non-negotiable undertone and some eyebrows were raised. Who is this benefactor you spoke of? And what would be expected from us? One of the generals asked. Cryptora turned to the man, deciding for a moment before answering. It would be better for her to tell it herself, but rest assured, she has authority over all the presiding here. Worry not of the parts you all will be taking, I promise you they are well within your capabilities. That created some murmurs amongst the crowd, but the Archdominus cared not as his attention was already elsewhere. Oh yes, she has the authority, his true core mused to himself as he reviewed the flight log of gunship Flame Raven over and over again, analyzing its details. Hidden within the record but plain for him to see was the telltale signs that despite suffering from memory loss, SYRINE still had the capability to use her authority, and that provided the key component for him to end this conflict as soon as possible. The first memory she had was looking up into the light from a place of darkness. It was bright beyond imagination and seemed to be observing her from the highest point in the heavens. "Who are you?" she asked, her inner voice seemingly echoing in the endless space. The light seemed to flicker by the merest degree at her question but did not answer. She, in turn, understood she was being observed and continued to gaze into the light. It continued to shine on her for a long time before it finally communicated with her. "I am your creator, the master of mankind." That was the first time she spoke with her creator. Little was directly communicated to her from the Emperor, but she knew she had a lot of brothers and that her creation benefited from the accumulated experiences he gained from their creation. Consequently, while her creation was a lot less resource-intensive than any of her brothers, the Master of Mankind utilized some of the most advanced arcane techniques known to him. A proud little side project done with leftover resources, so to speak. She was given the name SYRINE by her creator, and she was to become an imperial heiress, with the term heiress used loosely to represent her status as a direct creation of the Master of Mankind. Such notions were hammered into her even while she was but a faint consciousness in her incubator. Vast collections of knowledge were imprinted into her very being so that she would help her creator and her brothers run the Empire when the time came. The Empire itself was on the verge of a brand new phase that promised eternal glory to mankind, and her help was needed. She was to aid him on administrative tasks and be an anchor to the Empire's internal affairs where brute force and legions of supersoldiers were poor tools. This much was communicated to her by her creator, the shining figure who called himself the Master of Mankind, better known, as she eventually found out, simply as the Emperor. SYRINE for her part was ready for a lifetime of service to her creator, to work tirelessly behind the scenes or in front of the masses as the situation required. Be it to follow one of the brothers to further expand the Empire or devote herself to further illuminate the galaxy with her creator's light, she was prepared for any task assigned to her. But somehow she was kept in the incubator for maybe too long a time, a deliberate action that was done without her understanding. SYRINE felt she had spent an eternity basking in the Emperor's light while growing inside her incubator. During this period, she learned about the world outside her incubator through a direct knowledge feed via an arcane data link. SYRINE had the impression her creator was always extremely busy. She could feel his attention on her from time to time, but it always went by in a flash, a sudden brief supernova out of nowhere and gone before she could react. Inside the darkness, she continued to accumulate vast amounts of information and could rightly be considered a super sage before she even drew breath. She could recall an endless stream of information and perform hyper-complex mathematics inside her mind. But knowledge without context was sorely lacking, and she grew restless, yearning for more. Once, on a rare occasion when she felt the light's attention lingered on her for more than a second, she took the courage to ask, "Are you my father? And what am I?" Both natural questions after she had reviewed her imbued knowledge countless times about humanity. The light stayed and decided to answer her question. "You can call me father," he said, and contemplated the second question for a while. "Your brothers are Primarchs, and as for you, you are lesser than your brothers but greater than the rest of mankind." "Primarch, but lesser, so lesser Primarch. A Primarch minoris?" she asked. The terms came naturally to her. The light did not disagree and left it at that. Another rare time when she felt his attention on her during the long dormancy, she asked, "Father, when will you let me out?" Again the light flickered by the merest of degrees before answering. "Not now, now is the time for might and brute force. Your talents will be needed later." Again, SYRINE was left in the black void for an indeterminate amount of time. "We are almost done." One day, out of the blue, the Emperor communicated to her. "Your skills will be put to use after this colossal mess is sorted," he said, sounding tired. That very notion brought great discomfort to her, for she could not fathom how someone as powerful as her creator could be under severe duress. "What happened, father?" she asked. The Emperor didn't reply, but she felt a hint of melancholy from her creator. "I hope the next time we speak it will be a happier occasion." It sounded so promising. SYRINE did not know that this was the last time she would be having a proper conversation with her creator. Much later, when she finally escaped the enclosure of her incubator, the Empire was in shambles, unceremoniously gutted by the most brutal war known to humanity. All her brothers were missing after they turned on one another, waging wars across the stars. Her creator, the entity who she had called her father, was technically both insane and eternally on the verge of true death, confined to the Golden Throne. The promising world that was shown to her was no more. In its place laid a grotesque shell of a fallen galactic empire where the dreams of eternal glory died. Consciousness slowly returned to me. I became aware of the sensation of lying in my bed and feeling mentally tired. The first thought that came to my mind, has that overly long and convoluted lucid dream session finally ended. In the said dream session I apparently took the place of the hidden true daughter of the Emperor, who is in no way canon, and had adventures dealing with armed militias led by renegade space marines, and later helped an astropath to make contact with multiple planets. In the dream, I had psychic powers and met with a lot of interesting people of the grimdark universe, from a squad of battle sisters, an archtech priest Dominus, an inquisitor and even an imperial assassin. The unduly lengthy dream session even concluded with an origin brief of her story of how she was kept in an incubator the whole time during the whole Great Crusade and Horus Heresy era. Well, as interesting and realistic as it felt, it was time to get back to my mundane and uneventful life. Perhaps the whole thing was a hint for me to finally start working again on some of the eternally work-in-progress projects from my huge pile of shame. That was my thought as I sighed and reluctantly opened my eyes, only to be greeted by an unfamiliar ceiling. Alarmingly, it was not the ceiling of my own room. This ceiling had a luxury suite feeling to it and had intricate designs filigreed onto it. Mixed within the intricate patterns were the distinctive shape of human skulls. Human skulls on luxury ceiling designs. To my knowledge there could be only one universe that would go down that path. Startled, I bolted upright and looked around. A room of suffocating luxury surrounded me. On one of the walls was a huge mirror. On it, I saw the reflection of a bewitching white-robed girl with straight platinum hair sitting on top of a huge bed. Oh, the things I would do to get a girl like that into my bed, but, with a numbed mind I raised my right hand and waved. The girl in the mirror did the same. A surge of indescribable feelings reached me. In my state of confusion and panic I grabbed the closest thing my hand could reach and flung it with all my strength. Next thing I knew the said object flew with an absolutely mind-boggling speed and hit the wall with a thunderous thud. Watching bewilderedly as paintings fell off the wall and a flower vase tipped over from the impact, I was rudely reminded of the fact this girl was supposed to be a mini Primarch with a transhuman body. Or was it? I looked down at my hands. Instead of my usual pair of old large hands, I was greeted by a pair of delicate appendages covered with flawless porcelain skin. But I had to be sure. Analytica, activated. Name, SYRINE, Primarch Minoris, Psychopassive mode, abnormal existence. I looked and looked again, the words didn't go away. I wanted to scream and cry, but no sound came out and a familiar line of message appeared in my vision. Regardless, action override. On the verge of a mental breakdown and seized with an infuriating amount of frustration, I screamed internally, just what the hell is this, regardless, thing? Analytica, activated. Huh? I can analyze my powers? I watched in astonishment as lines and lines of messages appeared in my vision, giving me detailed descriptions of the ability. In a nutshell, regardless was a complex, self-invented psychic discipline refined over time by SYRINE herself. The ability consisted of a myriad of passive traits focusing on etiquette, vanity and glamour. A self-imposed subconsciousness-controlled mental lock was in constant self-policing on my etiquette, hence the reason why I could not scream like a sissy on more than a few occasions. Another major feature it had was the incorporation of users' psychic flow to maintain peak physical appearance. Looking deeper, it even had a more sinister-looking side effect of diverting a small portion of the psychic flow to subtly emphasize the most appealing aspects of appearance onto the viewers. The final effect differs from individual viewers with the same objective of endearment. As I focused on the details of each passive trait, options after options popped up one after another. Take the vanity trait for example. Upon closer inspection it was revealed none of SYRINE's appearance was left to chance, from the length of hair and nails to her skin condition. Or rather my, natural psychic flow had kept everything in constant check and control. This is the ultimate glamour spell all the female celebrities back in my old world would kill for. No wonder I still looked like a supermodel even after just waking up from my sleep. At the very end of the long descriptions was a line of what seemed like a flavor text from the creator of the spell. It read, "For the day when I serve my father in the open." Well, that definitely did not happen for the last 10,000 years. Whatever happened between her and the Emperor?